deregulating. Now, this is a touchy subject because a lot of our fellow Americans, we care about our environment. We don't want to sacrifice our environment in order to, shore up our economy and have, more jobs. We obviously want the jobs, but we don't want to sacrifice nature to do it. Especially for people that don't live in the city, that get to enjoy the outdoors. As you can see all these trees behind me, I don't want nature to die off. I don't want to kill it. I don't want to sacrifice even the smallest animal, for the sake of, improving our economy if that animal would truly be impacted and be gone forever, be extinct. But with that said, they're painting these stories as if somehow Trump's administration and these deregulations are sacrificing major portions of our world, whether it be the oceans, whether it be the forests, whether it be the atmosphere, whatever it is. They throw all kinds of stuff out here. They call him a climate denier. They call him all these kinds of things. And it's funny because climate denier is just their new term, and climate change is their new term because global warming didn't work and global cooling didn't make sense, and then just throw new stuff at it every day. I'm not going to disagree that climate's changing because it is. You don't even need to be a scientist to know that. But the deregulation that he has put in place, or his administration has put in place, has allowed us to become energy independent for the first time in my lifetime. Once again, I don't know the last time we were energy independent. We're now one of the primary exporters of oil in the world. Only 10 years ago, we were reliant on Russia and Saudi Arabia and other foreign partners, if you want to call them that, for our oil. And think about all the things that oil does. The petroleum industry is huge. Almost everything you do, everything you touch, practically, almost all of these things has been shaped by the petroleum industry. The jobs market for the petroleum industry is millions and millions and millions. And, we've been shoring up that industry, that portion of our economy, strongly under the Trump administration, which has other consequences, if you want to call them, as a result. So as a result of that, you and me, as tax-paying Americans, are spending less money on gas. We're spending less money on some of the goods that are made using petroleum. Those things are becoming cheaper. You make the ingredients cheaper, then the final product becomes cheaper. And so you're saving some money there. And on top of that is, the tax cuts, but that's totally different. Anyways, they're saying that he's destroying, our environment. I'll give you one example because I saw this just yesterday. The Guardian, Rolling Stone, New York Times, all these different news media outlets were publishing stories about the Trump administration lifting regulations on the Tongass I hope I'm saying that right, the Tongass National Forest, or National Forest in Alaska. And that was going to, essentially sacrifice the animals and the other, the wildlife, the trees, the environment in that area. And, they're calling it the lungs of North America. And they're not wrong. It's a massive forest. It's millions and millions of acres. It's huge. So I started doing some digging because these articles, the first one I saw was like lifeoutside.com. I could be getting it wrong. It was a terrible friggin' article. It had almost, I had to go through it with a fine-tooth comb to try to find the article because they didn't put it out there like, see for yourself and click on this source. No, it was this puff piece about all these animals that are here and all these trees that are here, and it didn't actually say what was being done by these restrictions being lifted. And the old restrictions, if you want to call it that, fell under this policy called the 2001 roadless rule. And I'll get to that in a second. But the piece that I was reading, I couldn't find the source. So I click on the source that they have referenced, which, I went to Google and I started searching. I wound up at The Guardian. I was reading their article, which they only referenced a source to Rolling Stone. So I go to the Rolling Stone and I read their whole article, and they source the New York Times. So I go to the New York Times, I read their whole article, and then their only source is also the New York Times. So I go to read their article, but I'm not willing to pay for the New York Times, so I can't read it because I've reached my daily limit. So I can't tell you if The New York Times second source that I found had the policy in it. Anyways, rewind, I find the policy, I read through it. It's called the 2001 Roadless Rule. And the 2001 Roadless Rule does, in fact, reduce and minimize the capability of corporations and municipalities in the area from logging and from paving new roads or repairing or reconstructing old roads. But it's misleading. If you don't read through the whole thing, and if you don't read through the new policy, which it has a fancier name, it's a lot longer. Just look up the 2001 Roadless Rule regulations lifted on Google, and you should be able to find the new policy. It's hard to find. But anyway, so you compare the 2001 Roadless Rule to the new policy, which is less restricting, and you find that under the old rule, on average, they logged 46 million board feet of wood, MMBF. That's the unit of measure they use for logging. So 46 million board feet. That's how many board feet of logs they're allowed to clear cut out of the Tongass and take away from the forest for whatever they're going to use it for. The lumber industry is huge. We need it for a lot of things too. Under the new rule, 46 million board feet. That's what they estimate is going to be logged out of that area. So nothing changed. But I thought the Trump administration's restrictions being lifted were going to decimate the Tongass National Forest. But the amount of wood that they're taking out of the Tongass is roughly the same. Okay, so that's point number one. Point number two, under the 2001 Roadless Rule, they are allowed to pave over a 100-year period, 994, it may be 93, 95, I don't know, 994 miles of road in 100 years. In the new policy, which is less restricting, they are allowed to pave 1,043 miles of road, roughly 50 miles more in the course of 100 years. I'm sorry, that's not enough to be damning at all. It also allows for them to repair roads that are in disrepair. And you have to remember, or realize if you don't already know, that there are tribal communities that are out in the Tongass that have limited access to each other. They do have roads, they already exist. There are logging operations that already take place in the Tongass. Now, with disrepaired roads, you're limiting their ability to gain access to each other, and you're also making it more dangerous when they attempt to, especially when you consider the logging trucks, which are driving in and out, or at least driving out with massive loads of logs on disrepaired roads, maybe not even paved roads. And what happens if these roads, because of the condition they're in, cause trucks to roll over? Now you're talking about a different environmental impact, because what if it catches fire and starts a massive forest fire in this national forest that has limited logging? So, the ground floor in the forest is not clean. It's essentially, a massive fuel load ripe for fires. No, and that's speculation, but I'm just saying, with better roads, with better road conditions, and not really new roads, you're allowing for these tribal communities and these logging operations to more safely connect and leave or enter the national forest safely. So all I'm saying is, the old rule was over, however many 100 acres, however many 100,000 acres of forest, of old growth and new growth. And the new one, it's over a larger area. So you're logging the same amount of wood, but over a larger area by hundreds of thousands of acres. So in reality, it's less clear cutting, because instead of focusing on a smaller area and cutting the same amount of trees out of there, you're in a much larger area, but you're only taking that same amount of trees out. So it's less likely clear cutting. So all that really says to you is that what you read and what the media sensationalizes is not necessarily the truth, even if it means you have to read through the Guardian, the Rolling Stone, the New York Times, the old policy, the new policy, which, by the way, that excerpt that I just quoted about the board feet was on page 45 of the new policy. 45. You have to do your own research. You can't just take the spoon and allow them to just feed you all these things, all these pieces of information that they're shaping to get you to think one way but they're not giving you the information. Now, mind you, like I said, these different articles that I tried to find the policy in no way, shape, or form told you actual metrics. They didn't tell you the data. They didn't tell you the quantity of logging or how many logs or whatever were being allowed to be removed from the forest. They didn't tell you how many more miles of road were being allowed over that same time span. And really the reason why is because it's not extravagant. It's not sensational. It's not even a big deal. Do your research and vote tomorrow. I'm Alex with LWS. I hope you guys are tuned into our channel. We're just getting started. We're gonna try to produce a lot more stuff, a lot more, more breakdowns of different controversial topics, and maybe even put boots on the ground in some of these conflict areas. So, just stand by. Stand back and stand by. We're gonna have some good stuff for you, and yeah, go vote tomorrow. I'm out.